I think that you probably had a lot of the motivation that I have and that a lot of people watching this have, which is I'm a young person. I want to go make boatloads of money. I want to drop out of college. I don't want to go to college. You were in the friggin' New York Times. That was like one of your dreams. You grew up in New York for a period of time.
Yeah.
So you start hitting these accomplishments. Top Gen Z podcast, six-figure marketing agency, made in the New York Times. Talk me through your relationship with how you thought these things were going to affect your fulfillment, your happiness, your satisfaction, and the before and after these moments.
Yeah. Yeah. The New York Times is a very special one to me because I don't think most kids grow up wanting to be in the New York Times. I think it's a pretty niche and specific goal. I mean, yeah, people probably have PR goals all the time, but for whatever reason, mine was New York Times. I think it comes down to when I was a kid, my dad was in the New York Times, and I thought, well, if my dad did it because he's my hero, then this is the pinnacle of success. Never asked him if it was the pinnacle of success for him. And so it just in the back of my head for my entire life, I was like, New York Times, New York Times. And even as I grew up and realized that it isn't necessarily the biggest outlet or whatever, it was just New York Times. And so it was one of those goals where I was like, I don't know what the ABC plan is here. Like, how do I even get on track to be in the New York Times? And so I'd pray about it all the time. And I was like, Lord, this is just something I want. And I don't know, give me an opportunity. And if it's right, then it'll be right. And this was probably a little bit over a year of doing the podcast. We were talking about the app Be Real, the social media app. We released a clip about it, and the clip did 1.5 million views. I'm gonna go 2 million. It did a decent amount of views on TikTok. We released it 6 months, like 6 months earlier. 6 months later, I'm sitting in the gym one morning and I get an email and like the headline is New York Times interview. And I thought, there's no way. I was like, why? I've talked about it on the show and someone's pranking me. Like, it's fake. Like, I've talked about it on the show and I know that some fan is just trolling me. I think I'm kissed, dude. I start reading through and I'm like, this might be legit. Like, the email is, journalist name at New York Times, and she's sending us a calendar invite, and it seems legit. And sure, if it was. And I remember going on that call and I was like, okay, like everything I work for is in this moment. Like I have to say the right things. After the right things, I'm like, I just have to get it right. Because the thing is, when you get interviewed by a major news outlet like this, there's no guarantee that your interview makes in the paper, right? They interview tons of people on the subject. And the specific article this time was about Be Real. So I was driving there and I was praying about it and I was like, Lord, just give me the words that it's supposed to go with this. And if I'm supposed to get in the Times, I'm supposed to get in the Times. And if I'm not, I'm not. And so I went into it with this mindset of like, I don't know what I'm going to say. I don't know what they're going to ask. You feel very unprepared in this situation, even though I feel like everything I've worked for has built up to this. And I get in there. She interviews us for about 15, 20 minutes and it ends. And I was like, okay. So I was interviewed by the New York Times. Like, that was pretty cool. Wonder if it's going to get released. She goes ghost for like a week. And I'm like, I kind of come to the point where I was like, all right, I got interviewed and like, that feels great. It's a great accomplishment. I don't think I made it in the Times and like, that's okay. This time I'll get another shot. Friday morning, I wake up. It's probably like 6 a.m. California time, so 9 a.m. on the East Coast. Email comes through. Article's been released. Here's your feature. And I thought, oh my gosh, I made the New York Times. This is awesome, dude. And I just had like a little blurb and it felt good. And like, the part that they quoted felt relative to where I was at, and it like really represented where my head was at, and so I felt great about it. And thinking back on it now, probably the time I felt most fulfilled is when I was laying in my bed, 6 a.m. It was just me, and I sat there and I read the article. And in my head, the fulfillment was going to come from me telling my friends, telling my parents. But when I think back on it now, the only time I felt like, wow, like I did this was when I was sitting there by myself in my bed hair, just scrolling through and being like, I made it, like I'm in the New York Times right now. And as the day went on and like I was telling certain people about it, I was like, I felt myself being so disappointed. I was like, why does nobody understand like how big this is? Like this, and like everyone was super supportive. My parents were super supportive, my dad and mom, like, so it's nothing on them. But I was like, why do I not feel how I thought this was gonna feel? Like it's supposed to be like the pinnacle, like it doesn't get better than this. And I remember then this was on a Friday and I woke up Saturday and I was like, yes, it was the New York Times. And my life continued to move on. And I felt myself being disappointed for like a week after. And I was just like, what? Why would God give me this opportunity and I didn't feel fulfilled by it? And I thought through it more and more. And I was like, oh, the fulfillment was not in actually seeing my names in the New York Times. It was the fact that I spent 100 weeks every Friday night at home prepping for episodes. I didn't go to high school. I'd never been to a school dance. All these things that I had felt like I missed out on. it will all led up to this moment that I also felt like was disappointment. And I realized like these accomplishments are going to come and they're going to happen and they're going to feel great for probably like a few hours. I'm going to tell my friends and that's going to feel good. And then the next day is going to happen. And so unless I figure out a way to find fulfillment in something else, I'm going to keep chasing these accolades that are going to come and go like an escalator. I'm going to get to the top and there's going to be just another escalator there.
Mm,
And we can get into like what I feel like is now fulfilling me and what feels like genuine fulfillment. But that story was pretty much kind of like the eye-opening moment for me. I was like, oh, this is, if I chase this, dude, I'm going to live a really miserable life. And I can figure out the money. I can figure out how to get in the New York Times. But if I can't figure out how to feel fulfilled and not worry about other people and if they feel as excited as me, and I realized that nobody is going to understand like I understand it. And I came to peace with that. And now all accomplishments, second New York Times feature, completely different experience.
mm. Dang, there's a lot of routes to go from this. I appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah.
The interesting thing about the elevator, as you describe it, is that there's people of similar or even more success to you who are 50 who haven't had this realization, which I imagine that a big part of this realization is because of God.
Yeah.
And when I say these people haven't had this realization, I'm not saying that they haven't felt unfulfilled with an achievement. It's just that they see the solution as feeling unfulfilled with achievement is to hit the next achievement,
Right.
which is what is the elevator.
Yeah.
But as you're speaking, you brought to mind the thought that I used to hate my birthday, which is weird. The reason I used to hate my birthday is because on my birthday, I really wanted attention from a specific person. It changes every year.
Yeah.
Based on the girl I like or the friends I think are cool. But I always get to my birthday and I'm like, I want these people to show me love.
Yeah.
And then either they do show me love or what happened most of the time is they didn't show me love.
Yeah.
And then I would feel very disappointed that they didn't show me love. And it would feel like a huge letdown.
Yeah.
But the other day I was talking to my friend Sina and he had like a really heavy but heart-piercing quote. He said to me, he said, I think the most people commit suicide after everyone's told them that they love them. And what he's saying is a lot of very depressed people who commit suicide, have this narrative for their life. Like, I'm not a good person. I don't belong here. I need love from other people. And a lot of those people, it's not just that they don't get any love. It's that they actually do get the love. Their mom does tell them they love them, and their friends do tell them they love them. But for some other reason, which changes person by person, they have an emptiness in their heart.
Yeah.
I would say it's lack of God most of the time. But some other reason, they have an emptiness. And once all those people tell them they love them, and they have the thing they thought was going to fill their hole, and it doesn't fill their hole, now they feel peak loneliness, and that's when they're ready to end it. And that's like, when he said it to me, just like with my birthday, it hit me hard because I thought, that's what happens to me on my birthday. Sometimes the people don't text me, and I feel sad that they didn't text me or whatever.
Yeah.
But sometimes, which I never thought about, they do text me, and they tell me they love me or appreciate me or whatever. But in my head, I already created the narrative. I already said, I need this person to prove that they love me by doing this. And then when they did it, it wasn't enough. It didn't fulfill me. And that is so interesting. And